The faint hum of the ceiling fan filled the room as I sat cross-legged on the couch, scrolling through my phone. My cat, Luna, perched silently on the armrest beside me. She had always been an odd little creature, quirky habits, unpredictable moods, but tonight, something felt different. Her ears twitched sharply toward the ceiling, and her golden eyes locked onto a spot just above us. At first, I didn't think much of it. Cats are strange beings. They stare at walls, chase invisible prey, and act like tiny detectives in their own mysterious world. But this time, there was something unnerving about the way she stared. It wasn't curiosity, it was focus. Absolute, unyielding focus. "Luna," I said softly, waving my hand in front of her face. "What's up there?" She didn't blink, not once. I sighed and leaned back against the cushions, brushing off the moment as another one of her quirks. Maybe she'd seen a spider or heard some distant noise that only feline ears could detect. Whatever it wasn't worth losing sleep over, or so I told myself. But then it happened again and again. Over the next few days, Luna's behavior grew increasingly peculiar. Every evening, without fail, she would leap onto the couch, plant herself firmly beside me, and fixate on the same patch of ceiling. Sometimes, she'd let out low, guttural growls that sent shivers down my spine. Other times, she'd crouch low, tail flicking wildly, as if preparing to pounce on something I couldn't see. By the fourth night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. It started with the sounds, or rather, the absence of them. The house seemed quieter than usual, almost oppressively still. Even the faint buzz of the refrigerator faded into nothingness. Then came the shadows. At first I thought it was just the light playing tricks on me. A flicker here, a blur there. But when I looked closer, I realized the shapes weren't random. They moved with purpose, gliding along the edges of the ceiling like ink spreading across paper. One particular shadow caught my eye, long, sinewy form that stretched from corner to corner before vanishing entirely. My heart skipped a beat. Was it real? Had I imagined it? I glanced at Luna, hoping for some kind of reassurance, but all I saw was her wide-eyed gaze, fixed intently upward. That's when I noticed the temperature drop. The air around me turned icy, raising goosebumps on my arms. I reached for the blanket draped over the couch, pulling it tightly around my shoulders. Yet, even beneath its warmth, the chill lingered. It wasn't natural, not in this weather, not in this house. And then I heard it, a soft scraping sound, barely audible, coming from somewhere above, like nails dragging lightly across wood. My breath hitched. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling, despite my best efforts to sound calm. No response, just silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. For a moment, I considered calling someone to share what I was experiencing. But who would believe me? Who would take seriously the ramblings of a person claiming their cat had led them to discover whatever this was? So instead, I stayed put, frozen in place, staring at the ceiling alongside Luna. Together, we waited for the sound to return, waited for the shadows to reappear, waited for answers that might never come. And deep down, I knew I wasn't ready for what I might find. The scraping sound returned, louder this time. It wasn't steady or rhythmic, it came in bursts, like something was testing the surface above us. My pulse quickened as I gripped the edge of the couch, knuckles white. Luna let out a low hiss, her body tense and coiled, ready to spring. "Okay," I muttered under my breath, more to myself than to her. "This isn't normal." I tried to rationalize it. Old houses made noises all the time, settling wood, creaking beams, draft slipping through cracks. But this wasn't an old house. I'd moved into this apartment barely 6 months ago, and until now, it had been quiet, predictable, boring even. There was no reason for these sounds, no logical explanation for why the air felt heavier with each passing second. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I stood up slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements. Luna's eyes followed me, unblinking, as if she was silently urging me to stay seated, or maybe warning me not to go further. Either way, her gaze sent another chill racing down my spine. "I have to check," I whispered, though whether it was for her benefit or mine, I wasn't sure. Grabbing the flashlight from the kitchen drawer, I hesitated before heading toward the hallway. The beam of light cut through the darkness, illuminating patches of the ceiling as I moved. Up close, the shadows seemed less menacing, just ordinary shapes cast by furniture and fixtures. Yet every step I took felt heavier, as if the house itself was resisting my investigation. When I reached the base of the stairs leading to the attic, I stopped. The door at the top loomed ahead, slightly ajar. I didn't remember leaving it open. My chest tightened. "Come on," I muttered, forcing myself to climb. Each step groaned beneath my weight, the sound echoing unnaturally loud in the stillness. By the time I reached the top, my hands were trembling so badly that I almost dropped the flashlight. Pushing the door wider, I stepped inside. The attic was cramped and cluttered, filled with boxes I hadn't unpacked since moving in. Dust motes floated lazily in the dim light streaming through the small window. At first glance, everything seemed undisturbed, too undisturbed. Then I saw it. In the far corner, near the eaves, the plasterboard ceiling bore faint scratches long, jagged marks that looked fresh, fresh enough that they couldn't have been there when I last checked the attic weeks ago. What the hell? I approached cautiously, shining the flashlight over the area. That's when I noticed the smell of faint, acrid odor clinging to the air, like burnt plastic mixed with damp earth. It made my stomach churn, and then I heard it again, closer this time, louder. A sharp skittering noise directly above me. Someone was moving behind the ceiling panels. Whatever it wasn't human. Panic surged through me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I scanned the room for anything unusual, anything out of place. That's when I spotted the trapdoor embedded in the ceiling. It was partially hidden by cobwebs and dust, but there was no mistaking its presence. A cold realization washed over me. Whatever was making those sounds, it was trapped up there, for now. But how long would it stay that way? The trapdoor stared back at me, its rusted hinges glinting faintly in the flashlight's beam. My mind raced with questions. What was up there? How long had it been trapped? And why did the thought of opening that door fill me with such dread? I took a step closer, my breath shallow and uneven. The skittering noise above had stopped, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. It felt like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do next. "Don't be stupid," I muttered, trying to convince myself to turn around and leave. "You don't even know what's up there." But deep down, I knew I couldn't walk away. No, not after everything I'd heard and seen. Luna's behavior, the shadows, the cold air, the scratching. It all pointed to something unnatural lurking just beyond that thin layer of plasterboard. If I didn't investigate, how could I ever feel safe in this house again? With trembling hands, I dragged over an old wooden chair from the corner of the attic. The legs scraped against the floorboards, the sound jarring in the oppressive quiet. Placing the chair directly beneath the trapdoor, I hesitated once more. "This is insane," I whispered, gripping the flashlight so tightly my knuckles turned white. But then I remembered Luna's wide, unblinking eyes, staring at the ceiling night after night. She wasn't just curious, she was afraid. Whatever was up there, she sensed it too, maybe even before I did. Taking a deep breath, I climbed onto the chair. The wood creaked under my weight, but it held firm. Reaching up, I pushed gently against the trapdoor. It didn't budge. "Come on," I grunted, pressing harder. Finally, with a reluctant groan, the door swung open, releasing a cloud of dust that made me cough violently. I waved the flashlight around, illuminating the narrow crawl space above. It was pitch black, save for the weak beam of light cutting through the gloom. The air smelled worse, hair thicker, fouler, like decay mingled with dampness. My stomach churned again, but I forced myself to look closer. At first, I saw nothing unusual, just exposed beams, insulation batting, and cobwebs clinging to every surface. But as I moved the flashlight further into the space, something caught my eye, dark shape, wedged between two support beams. My heart sank. It looked like fur. No, not fur. Feathers. Blackened, matted feathers clumped together as if they'd been burned. They were scattered across the floor of the crawl space, mixed with fragments of bone and tufts of what might have been hair. "What the hell is this?" I murmured, my voice shaking, and then I saw the nest. It was massively 3 feet widened, constructed from twigs, scraps of fabric, and other unidentifiable materials. At its center lay several smooth, glossy objects that gleamed faintly in the flashlight's glow. Eggs, but they weren't bird eggs. They were too large, too irregularly shaped, their surfaces covered in strange, vein-like patterns that pulsed faintly, as if alive. A wave of nausea hit me, and I nearly dropped the flashlight. My instincts screamed at me to get out, to run as far away from this place as possible, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from those pulsating eggs. Suddenly, the silence shattered. A low, guttural growl reverberated through the attic, echoing off the walls and sending a fresh surge of terror coursing through my veins. It came from somewhere above me, close enough that I could feel the vibrations in the air. Something was awake. I scrambled off the chair, nearly falling in my haste to put distance between myself and the trapdoor. The growl grew louder, angrier, accompanied by the unmistakable sound of movement, something heavy shifting in the crawl space. "Oh God, oh God, oh God," I repeated, backing toward the stairs. Luna appeared at the bottom of the steps, her fur bristling, her tail puffed up like a bottle brush. Her golden eyes locked onto mine, filled with an emotion I couldn't quite place. Fear, warning, desperation. "Stay there," I hissed, though whether it was meant for her or me, I wasn't sure. The trapdoor shuddered violently, the metal frame rattling against the wood. Whatever was up there was trying to get out. Without thinking, I bolted down the stairs, nearly tripping over Luna in my panic. She darted ahead of me, disappearing into the hallway, while I slammed the attic door shut behind me and fumbled with the lock. For a moment, everything was silent. Then came the scratching. It started softly, tentative, as if testing the barrier between us. But within seconds, it escalated into a frenzy, claws tearing at the wood, the sound deafening in the confined space. I backed away, my chest heaving, my mind racing. Whatever was in that attic, the scratching grew louder, more frantic, as if whatever was trapped above knew I was still there. My back hit the wall of the hallway, and I realized I'd been retreating without even thinking. Panic clouded my thoughts. But one thing was clear: I couldn't stay here, not with that thing trying to break through. I glanced toward the living room where Luna had disappeared. She wasn't in sight, but I could hear her low, guttural growls emanating from somewhere deeper in the apartment. Her warning sent another jolt of fear through me. If she was scared, then I should be terrified. But what could I do? Run outside? Call for help? The idea of stepping foot back into the attic or anywhere near that trapdoor felt impossible. Yet staying put didn't feel much safer. My phone buzzed in my pocket, startling me. It was a text from my friend Sarah. "Hey, you free tonight?" Normally, I would have ignored it or replied casually, but right now, seeing her name felt like a lifeline. "Sarah," I whispered, typing furiously with trembling fingers. "Are you home? Can you come over? Something's wrong." Before she could respond, the scratching stopped. Silence. For a split second, relief washed over me. Maybe it had given up. Maybe it wasn't as dangerous as I thought. Then came the thud. A heavy, deliberate impact against the attic door. Once, twice, 3 times. Each blow reverberated through the walls, shaking the entire apartment. "Oh God," I choked out, clutching my phone like it was some kind of talisman. Luna reappeared at the end of the hall, her movements jerky and unnatural. She wasn't running away anymore. She was leading me somewhere. Her eyes locked onto mine, wide and insistent, before she darted toward the front door. "Wait," I called, though my voice barely carried over the deafening noise behind me. Another crash echoed through the house, followed by the unmistakable sound of splintering wood. The attic door wouldn't hold much longer. I ran after Luna, stumbling over furniture in my haste. When I reached the front door, she was already pawing at it, her claws scraping desperately against the wood. "You want me to leave?" I asked, my voice cracking. She let out a sharp yell, glancing between me and the door. I hesitated. Leaving meant abandoning my home and possibly unleashing whatever was upstairs into the world. But staying meant facing it head-on, unarmed and unprepared. Another thunderous crash made the decision for me. Grabbing my keys from the side table, I unlocked the door and yanked it open. Cold night air rushed in, stinging my face. Luna bolted outside, disappearing into the darkness. "Luna," I shouted, but she was gone. There was no time to chase her. Behind me, the attic door gave way with a final, ear-splitting crack. Whatever was up there was free. Heart pounding, I stepped outside and slammed the door shut behind me. Fumbling with shaky hands, I locked it, knowing full well it wouldn't stop whatever was inside. The street was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that amplifies every creak and groan. I scanned the area for Luna, but she was nowhere to be seen. Instead, my eyes landed on something else's shadow, moving across the roof of the building next door. It wasn't human. Its silhouette was elongated, almost insect-like, with too many limbs writhing in unnatural angles. It paused, tilting its head on what passed for a head-us, if sensing my gaze. Then it vanished, melting into the darkness. A chill ran down my spine. Was it watching me? Had it been watching me all along? My phone buzzed again. Sarah's reply. "On my way. Be there in 10 minutes?" Could I survive 10 more minutes out here, exposed and vulnerable? Or worse, should I go back inside and risk confronting the creature directly? As if answering my question, a faint glow appeared in the window of my apartment. A sickly green light seeped through the curtains, pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. The eggs, they were hatching. The pulsing green light from my apartment window grew brighter, casting an eerie glow across the street. My breath hitched as I stood frozen on the sidewalk, torn between running for help and confronting whatever was happening inside. The thought of those eggs hatching and what might emerge filled me with a paralyzing dread. But then I remembered Luna. She had led me outside, away from danger. Was she trying to protect me, Or was this her way of ensuring I didn't interfere with whatever was unfolding upstairs? Before I could decide, movement caught my eye. Across the street, in the shadows of a parked car, something shifted. At first, I thought it was just the wind rustling through leaves or trash blowing across the pavement. But no, it was too deliberate, too controlled. A pair of glowing eyes stared back at me from the darkness. They weren't human eyes. They were wide, unblinking, and filled with an intelligence that made my skin crawl. Slowly, the figure stepped into the dim light of a street lamp. It was telenaturally so, with spindly limbs that bent at odd angles. Its body was covered in slick, black feathers that shimmered faintly under the light, giving it an almost oily appearance. A long, jagged beak protruded from its face, sharp enough to tear flesh apart. My legs locked in place as I stared at the creature, unable to move or scream. It tilted its head, studying me with the same intensity Luna had shown when staring at the ceiling. Then, without warning, it spread its wings' massive leathery appendages that stretched far wider than any bird's should and let out a piercing shriek that shattered the silence. Neighbors' lights flickered on in nearby apartments, but no one came outside. Either they hadn't heard the noise or they were too afraid to investigate. The creature took a step toward me, its claws clicking against the asphalt. I stumbled backward, fumbling for my phone. Sarah would be here soon, but 10 minutes felt like an eternity right now. "Stay back," I shouted, my voice trembling. The creature paused, tilting its head again, as if amused by my feeble attempt at defiance. Then, with a sudden burst of speed, it lunged forward, closing the distance between us in seconds. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my ears. Behind me, I could hear the flapping of its wings and the scrape of its claws against the ground. It was too fast, but adrenaline pushed me to keep moving. I ducked into an alleyway, hoping to lose it among the narrow passageways and overflowing dumpsters. The stench of garbage hit me immediately, but I barely noticed. All I cared about was putting as much distance as possible between myself and that thing. For a moment, the sounds behind me faded. Had I lost it? Then I heard it again, the unmistakable sound of wings beating overhead. Looking up, I saw the creature perched on a fire escape above me, its glowing eyes fixed on mine. There was nowhere left to run. Suddenly, a familiar yowl pierced the air. Luna darted out from behind a dumpster, her fur bristling as she positioned herself between me and the creature. Her growl was low and guttural, more menacing than anything I'd ever heard from her before. The creature hissed, spreading its wings threateningly. For a moment, the two of them faced off, predator versus protector. "Luna, no," I cried, reaching for her. But she didn't budge. Instead, she launched herself at the creature, claws extended. The impact sent both of them tumbling to the ground in a flurry of feathers and fur. I wanted to intervene, to help her, but I was rooted to the spot, paralyzed by fear. The fight was brief, but brutal. The creature screeched in anger, swiping at Luna with its razor-sharp talons. She dodged most of the blows, but one strike grazed her side, leaving a deep gash. Seeing her injured snapped me out of my trance. "No," I screamed, grabbing a metal pipe lying discarded near the dumpster. Without thinking, I charged at the creature, swinging the pipe with all my strength. It connected with a sickening thud, knocking the creature off balance. It stumbled backward, letting out another ear-splitting shriek before taking flight, disappearing into the night sky. Breathing heavily, I dropped the pipe and rushed to Luna's side. Blood soaked her fur, but she was still alive, her golden eyes meeting mine with a mixture of pain and determination. We need to get you help, I said, scooping her into my arms. Back in the parking lot, Sarah spread a blanket across the hood of her car and gently took Luna from me. Let me see, she said softly, her tone steady despite the chaos surrounding us. Reluctantly, I handed Luna over, watching anxiously as Sarah cleaned and bandaged her wound. Luna whimpered faintly, but didn't resist, her golden eyes half closed with exhaustion. She'll be okay, Sarah assured me, though I wasn't sure if she believed it herself. As she worked, I stared into the distance, replaying everything that had happened. The eggs hatching, the creature escaping, the green light exploding. None of it made sense, yet somehow it all felt connected. What were those things? I murmured aloud, more to myself than to Sarah. What things? She asked, sharply, glancing up from her work. The creatures, I said haltingly. There was one upstairs, in my apartment. It came out of the attic, and then another one attacked us outside. They weren't birds or animals. They were something else. Sarah frowned, her hands pausing mid-motion. Are you saying this is real? Like supernatural real? I met her gaze, my own eyes wide with desperation. I don't know what they were, but they're dangerous, and they're still out there. For a long moment, she didn't respond. Then she sighed heavily, shaking her head. This is insane, but I believe you. Her words surprised me. You do. You wouldn't make this up, she said simply. Not like this. Not with your cat bleeding in my arms. Her acceptance brought a strange sense of relief, as if sharing the burden made it slightly lighter. We can't go back to your place, she continued. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. We'll figure something out tomorrow. Find a hotel or crash at my place. But for now, let's get somewhere safe. I nodded gratefully, feeling a flicker of hope for the first time in hours. As we climbed back into the car, I noticed Luna's breathing had steadied. Her eyes fluttered open, meeting mine with a look that seemed almost apologetic. It's okay, I whispered, stroking her fur gently. You saved me. She let out a soft purr, closing her eyes again. Sarah started the engine, and we drove off into the night. Behind us, the city skyline loomed dark and silent, hiding secrets I wasn't sure I wanted to uncover. But one thing was certain. Whatever those creatures were, they weren't done with me yet.